Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to talk about my reading stats of 2021. So if you're a nerd for like numbers, I think this is the right video for you. I decided to split it up this year. I'm doing this video as my stats, and then my next video will be all the books that I've read in 2021, where I ranked them all in order of the star rating. So keep an eye out for that. But today we're just gonna talk about some more general statistics that I collected in my reading spreadsheet for the year. So let's get into it. So I set my reading goal to 52 books last year. That's usually what I do, and this year I managed to read 79 books. So that is surpassing my reading goal that I set, but I also usually want to go for around 70 to 85 books. I think that is like the optimum number for me, so 79 is right in the middle of that, and I'm very, very happy with the amount of reading that I did. I definitely see that my reading has increased since I use audiobooks. I've been doing that for a couple of years now, but they become more and more a part of my daily routines, especially with the pandemic. So yeah, that definitely helped with that number. So overall, I have read 22,484 pages last year. That means that I have read about 61 pages a day, or 1,870 pages a month, or 431 pages a week. If that is helpful to put it into perspective. Obviously, I have not consistently read these numbers like every week and every day. I had my best reading month page-wise in October, where I read 2,731 pages. That was mainly because I had time off during October, and you can definitely see that throughout the month. Whenever I do have some days off work, I read a lot more, and yeah, that's just understandable, I guess. And I listened to 17,599 minutes of audiobook. That means I listened to about 293 hours, and that would mean I had listened to about 48 minutes a day, or 24 hours per month. So I think that is quite impressive. As I said, my audiobook time is always going up and up, and I do like that. My best month for audiobooks was November, where I listened to 1,961 minutes. That is when I really started using the bus more again because of the pandemic. I tried to stay away from it for a while. In the summertime, I was riding my bike, but now that it's like really, really cold, I'm using the bus a lot, and I listen to my audiobook when I'm on the bus, for example. So that's like these kind of stats, and now I want to go into more like overall things. Oh, by the way, one more interesting thing, I read 25 audiobooks last year, but I think this number is a little bit flawed because I had one audiobook I hadn't finished, but it still counts. So I finished 24, but I started 25 last year, I guess. So looking at the year at a glance, talking about the number of books I've read the most books in August. I did that little challenge thing where I tried to read 7 books in 7 days in August. So in total I read 10 books in August. That was my best month. And my weakest month were February, September and December, where I read 5 books per month. And talking about pages, this is also a little bit skewed, but here it says that I read the most pages per day in April. I think that is because I finished Middlemarch in April, so it counted the whole book for that month, and again, this is a bit skewed as well. The next highest number would have been August again, with 77 pages, because I did that little project. So my most read genre is fantasy. I have read 29 fantasy books. That is more than a third of my reading last year, which I'm very happy about because that is my favorite genre. And in the last couple of years, I feel like I have not read enough fantasy to really say that. Other popular genres were historical fiction with 10 books, horror with 7 books, and surprisingly romance with 8 books. So yeah, I do read a wide variety of books and genres, so that is definitely something you can see in those stats as well. And then for page length, most of my books are between 300 and 399 pages. My longest book was It by Stephen King, and my shortest book, I think, was The Library of Saints by Leigh Bardugo, which is just a small collection of short stories. For star rating, my average rating was, I think, a 4.1 star. So I had an amazing month of reading, not month, year. I definitely read a lot of good books. I gave 18 books 5 stars, and 13 of those were new reads and 5 were rereads. I also gave 13 books 4.5 stars and 25 books 4 stars. My lowest rating was 2 star. So you will see which books that were in the next video, but yeah, definitely great quality there. Most of my reading is adult books with 62%, but I also read a little bit of YA and children's literature. I mostly read standalones with 66%. This is also something I'm working on because I love binging series, but because I usually don't own the whole series, I will never do that. So that's something I want to work on in 2022 because it annoys the heck out of me that I don't binge series more because it is literally my favorite. And then something I also have a bit of a problem with, but 80% of the books I have read, sometimes these percentages don't make sense because the total goes over 100%. That is because it counts all the books, not only the books I have finished, and that skews a little bit. But okay, 63 books that I've read last year were books that I bought last year, and only 21 were TBR books that I already owned before the year. That's also because I got a lot of books for my birthday, but I have not read all of them yet, which is really bad. But yeah, that's something I also want to work on because I am just bad at reading my TBR books. So for this year, I actually made a whole list with all the books I currently own so I can tick them off, which I hope will motivate me more to read them. Looking at diversity in my books, the biggest category is lesbian books, so female romance books. In some capacity. I read 13 of those, and I also read 5 books with gay characters, 5 books with bisexual characters, 4 books with disabled characters, and the rest is lower. So yeah, I'm quite happy with that. It could be more, but I think that especially when it comes to like sexuality, my reading is quite broad, so I'm happy with that. I still have a lot of other things I want to read more about, especially disability. That one is just hard to find in a way that I like them, but I do have a couple on my TBR for this year. Format-wise, I'm a paperback reader. I read 45 paperbacks and 25 audiobooks. So that's the main way I consume books. And then when you look at the publishing, most of the books that I've read were published between 2016 and 2020. And I also read 21 books that were published in 2021, which was not on purpose, but it's still funny. I hadn't realized that one before. I read 11 books that were translated. But I only have the statistics for 10 books where they were translated from, so I'm not quite sure what happened there, but 9 were from English and 1 was from French, so my reading in translation is not going that great, and I actually don't really enjoy reading in translation as well. So most of the books I read are in English. That was 56 books, and 18 books were in German. Some of those were written in German and some were translated. Looking at the authors, I always read mostly female authors, so 63 books I have read were from female authors. That happens every year, and it's not something I want to change dramatically. I do use this as gender, not as like any biological category. So if I've read a book by a trans person who identifies as a woman, I would count it as a woman, just to clarify that. Yeah, my like author, continent and country stuff is really depressing this year. I read 52 books that were from authors from North America, and all of these I think were from the US. And then I read 22 books from European authors, and I'm so shocked I did not read a single book by an African author, which really pisses me off because I love African fiction, like from African continent. Like I like the kind of stuff that is written by Nigerian authors, or you know, anything around that part of Africa, but I also like Northern Africa authors, so I don't know why I didn't read those. Something I always struggle with is South America. I never read South American authors for some reason. Then with the race, that is always very hard for me to identify. So this is just an estimate because, you know, you can't always see whether a person is white or not. So I only have a very broad category of person of color. And I think 30 books I've read were by a person of color, and 54 books were by a white author. So again, something that could be better, definitely could be better. Something I always like to look at as well is whether the author was new to me or whether I had read books by them before. And 45 books I've read were new to me, and 39 were authors that I had read before. That's also always the case that I read more new to me authors. I don't know why that is. I would say it's not on purpose, but something is definitely happening there. But this year it is closer to 50-50 than the years before, I think. So I'm quite happy with that because, yeah, for some reason I don't stick to the authors that I know I love, and that's kind of weird. Okay, now let's talk about the books that I bought. This is shameful, so let's just get it over with. I bought 60 books. I did not all buy them myself. Some I got gifted as well. This number is especially high because I got gifted a lot of books for my birthday and then also for Christmas. So that was at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year. So I had a pile of new books at the end of the year now as well. Most of those were fantasy. 20 of the 60 were fantasy books, and that is closely followed by romance and non-fiction books. So that makes me quite happy because I like reading non-fiction and I have to just seek it out more. So that was quite nice. The month I acquired the most books was in January because of my birthday, and then followed by December because of Christmas, and then October because in October I did some retail therapy, I guess, and I bought quite a few books. In total, I spent €500 on books. That does not include the ones that I got gifted because I didn't pay anything for those. So yeah, quite a lot. I spent quite a lot on books this year. A lot of those were my audiobooks as well. So as I increased listening to audiobooks, I also increased buying them. What I really like about my audiobook buying is that I only ever buy a new one once I finished the last one. So I never have like unread audiobooks. So that is okay with me spending my money on. So yeah, €500 for that. Most of the books I bought were also adult, so 37 of the 60 were adult books, and I usually buy them on Amazon. I have to admit that, because it's very hard to buy English books in Germany, especially since Brexit. It's very hard to have alternatives where you get the books shipped quite quickly. We tried some and it didn't really work that well. I also tried buying from other chain bookstores that do ebooks, so that does work as well, and I want to get more into ebooks in 2022. We'll see about that. And then for borrowed books, I did borrow a ton of books this year. I was definitely addicted to the library. It opened up in May again. So yeah, I borrowed a ton of books this year. I did not read most of those, or like all of those. I guess I read most of them, but like my ratio has been better. So yeah, most of the books I borrowed again were fantasy with 10 out of 30, but it seems like I in total borrowed 32 books. I just with 2 didn't quite know which genre they would fall in before reading them. So yeah, fantasy was definitely the biggest genre I borrowed, and then literary fiction. Usually my best books of the year I borrowed from the library, so that's also really weird, but yeah, it happens. I borrowed the most books in November. I borrowed 7 books from the library, and then in October I borrowed 5 books. So yeah, it doesn't sound that much, but if you consider that I only read 79 books and I borrowed over 30, doesn't really add up. And then I also bought 60, so yeah, that does not work. With the amount that I saved through the library, I only count the books that I have actually read. So if I return a book to the library unread, I will not count that as money saved. And so I only saved 170 euro through the library this year, which is still a big amount. I do pay 20 euros of fees to have access to the library. So in total, I have saved 150 euros because of the library. So that's a huge amount, to be honest. And I'm always very glad to have access to a well-stocked library. And the last number I wanted to mention is that I did like a 50-50 thing. 50% of the books I borrowed were adult, and the other 50% were YA and children's fiction. So yeah, as you can see, I do go into the kind of YA section of the library more than I go into the YA section at the bookstore, just because with that YA books, I'm never really quite sure whether I will like them. But that would be all, I think, for stats that I have for you today. Maybe 2 more things, because they were in this spreadsheet that I used. I did not make my own one. There were 2 challenges. One is the Read Harder challenge, and the other one, where did it go? The other one is the Read Women challenge, and I just wanted to quickly count how many of those challenges I did. Please keep in mind that I never tried to do them. I just looked every once in a while whether I did by accident read some of the prompts, just to see how widespread my reading is. So I read 10 out of the 24 challenges for the Read Harder challenge, and I read 8 out of the 24 Read Women challenge prompts. So that's quite okay. I think, as I said, I never tried to fulfill them, and so I think that my reading is quite widespread. And they also had stuff like magazines and cookbooks on there, which I don't read. I use cookbooks, but I don't read them. So yeah, there were a couple of challenges I knew I wouldn't do, but yeah, I'm quite happy with that. I think that my reading was quite widespread. It was quite fun. I had so many good books last year, and I hope you did too. Let me know some of your favorite stats if you have them for your reading in 2021. And yeah, I'll be back with all of the books I read in a ranking video, and I will talk to you soon. Bye!